6 agonizing weeks later, and law enforcement still cannot rule out a single terrifying possibility. The phantom who orchestrated this remains a critical threat. They could easily strike again. Joining us is Jesse Weber, the sharp-minded 11 p.m. anchor for News Nation. He also lends his legal expertise to the Law and Crime Network. He has been obsessively tracking the chilling Corey Richins trial for our team. But more critically tonight, the baffling Nancy Guthrie disappearance. Jesse, thank you for stepping into the shadows with us. Glad to be here. We just obtained a disturbing new report, and frankly, its implications are utterly paralyzing. The Pima County Sheriff quietly confessed to NBC News. We think we know his exact motive. Evidence suggested a targeted hit, yet they are, quote, not 100% certain. Whispers imply a dark connection to the Guthrie bloodline. Do you possess any hidden details? If not, how do you decode this cryptic messaging? I am completely in the dark on that front, and honestly, it would not be the first time that this exact sheriff's department issued a statement designed to spark pure ambiguity and mass confusion. Here is my theory. Investigators likely suspect Nancy Guthrie was hunted down specifically to send a message to Savannah. Or perhaps evidence suggested a sinister crime of opportunity, a high-end burglary that spiraled into absolute madness. But at this agonizing stage of the investigation, systemic communication failures have cornered the sheriff. He simply cannot afford to publicly cross a single horrifying theory off the board. He might tease a clear motive to the press, but nobody knew yet if he could genuinely promise the public they were safe. No one should be sleeping peacefully tonight. I cannot guarantee this monster will not strike again. Think about the psychology here, Dan. Even if Nancy was collateral damage to traumatize Savannah, we are tracking an incredibly dangerous predator. The sheriff is dead right. This invisible phantom requires extreme caution. They remain a lethal community threat, and their bloodlust might not be satisfied. But asking if this mastermind is already linked to other unsolved kidnappings? That was the first mistake. It is a terrifying reality to face. And based on the bloody breadcrumbs we currently have, do investigators still officially classify this as an abduction? Every leaked whisper suggests that remains their primary, horrifying working theory. Let me be brutally transparent. It is day 44. 6 grueling weeks of dead ends. Breakthroughs are basically non-existent. We grasp at fleeting optimism, a speck of genetic material, blurry security frames from New York. But watch the department's playbook closely. They desperately beg for community intervention, fueling relentless media speculation. Then, the second a lead goes cold or fails to bleed suspicion, they abruptly shut it down completely. They announce it without hesitation. Especially now. This mystery has utterly infected every corner of social media. And with an obsessed public playing amateur detective, authorities are deeply terrified. They must feed this hungry crowd accurate facts. They cannot afford a systemic failure of misinformation before locking down concrete evidence. But here is the lingering dread. Is this just strategic fodder? Meat thrown to ravenous media hounds like myself, desperate to declare a major breakthrough from the sheriff? But when the dust settles, he has revealed absolutely nothing. Exactly. However, he grasps a chilling truth. Citizens are his ultimate weapon to unmask this ghost. Look at the sinister duality of this case. First, the microscopic truth. That DNA scraped from the New York crime scene, it was shipped off for genetic genealogy. For the uninitiated, this is science weaponized. You upload the sequence, and suddenly a sprawling web of potential blood relatives emerges. You systematically hunt down every branch. That is exactly how Bryan Kohberger was cornered. The Idaho Monster, the Golden State Killer. I firmly believe this biological key will unlock everything, but nobody knew yet when true answers would surface. Do not forget Savannah's agonizing plea, a staggering $1 million reward for her beloved mother's recovery, pleading with neighbors for security footage since January 1st. 30 days before Nancy vanished into the unknown, digital manhunts blasting this suspect's face everywhere, pleading for anyone to recognize that ominous backpack. The public remains the ultimate key to justice here. But as the clock ticks down today, detectives are drowning in thousands of frantic tips. Yet they refuse to leak a single tactical detail. They are holding all the cards. But here is the multi-million-dollar question. Is law enforcement just running a psychological head fake? Because evidence suggested this house was hunted, right? A masked figure stalks the perimeter, a phantom who had allegedly probed the property hours before. They returned under the cover of darkness, prompting authorities to eventually concede this was a calculated, targeted strike. Perhaps the local sheriff isn't entirely to blame for the mounting investigative chaos. Relentless press hounds keep asking identical questions, forcing an overwhelmed lawman to scramble for adequate answers. He's caught in an impossible bind, terrified of publicly declaring this a targeted hunt. He hesitates to assure the community that the phantom intruder won't strike another quiet home, because if another door gets kicked in, the resulting public outrage would permanently destroy his career. Evidence suggested this rural department was suddenly drowning in the most massive manhunt of their entire lives. Facing fierce backlash, he plays his cards close to the vest, a standard defensive tactic in high-stakes investigations. Detectives withhold crucial details until forced, only pursuing leads when public pressure becomes absolutely unavoidable. Eventually, investigators had to break their silence regarding the victim's immediate inner circle. The sheriff publicly exonerated her siblings simply because internet sleuths were relentlessly dragging their names through the mud. Moving forward, law enforcement will only verify facts when their hand is completely forced. But nobody knew yet what would break late Friday night, courtesy of newly leaked network reports. Hidden digital eyes at Nancy's residence had quietly captured more than anyone initially realized. Federal agents pulled fresh stills from motion sensors guarding the vulnerable backyard and pool of her Arizona sanctuary. While fluid video remained lost to the void, eerie thumbnail snapshots survived every time something tripped the sensors. Yet, incredibly, those fragmented frames revealed absolutely nothing sinister. Detectives scrutinized multiple unknown figures loitering around her property in the shadowy days leading up to her disappearance. But on the actual night Nancy vanished into thin air, total digital silence. Authorities officially remain baffled, though insiders quietly whisper that this blind spot is deeply unsettling. Local authorities rigidly maintain they are still processing this highly disturbing technological anomaly. If they are truly desperate for community tips, hiding these newly discovered snapshots makes zero logical sense. Perhaps the department arrogantly believes the files hold zero evidentiary weight, just as they previously claimed. They dismiss the files as useless while simultaneously claiming they are still studying them, a maddening contradiction. The identity of those ghosts on film remains a mystery, marking yet another devastating dead end. Rumors had previously swirled about a highly calculated predator utilizing illegal signal jammers. Investigators swarmed a power box stationed ominously close to where Nancy spent her final normal hours. Surrounding residents reported chilling network blackouts at the exact moment she was ripped from her home. That kind of technological sabotage completely changes the profile of the killer. Analyzing the grainy security tapes, eagle-eyed viewers noticed a terrifying anomaly near the prowler's waist. A metallic antenna protruded from their clothing, heavily suggesting a portable scrambling device. This black market tech is disturbingly accessible, the perfect tool for an apex predator to blind the neighborhood. Nancy lacked premium cloud storage, leaving her fundamentally unprotected against such a surgical strike. That detail felt like the ultimate breakthrough, but it quickly became another crushing illusion. The sheriff shattered those hopes, flatly declaring the neighborhood power hub was completely clean. Yet they still begged the terrified public to surrender any lingering digital breadcrumbs to federal profilers. Piecing together this fractured nightmare feels like solving a puzzle with half the pieces missing. The delayed recovery of those backyard thumbnails exposes a glaring systemic failure in the initial crime scene sweep. When exactly were these found? And how can they definitively rule out the presence of a stalking shadow? That systemic blind spot is precisely why this terrifying mystery is growing colder by the minute. Without a paid archive guarding her footage, the victim's final moments were permanently erased from the server. That was the first mistake. But let's shift focus and test our collective memory for a second, because this creeping bureaucratic paralysis echoes another infamous, blood-chilling slaughter. We are 44 agonizing days into this hunt, which begs the question, how long did Bryan Kohberger roam free? Do you recall exactly how many agonizing weeks passed? The timeline is everything. Let us verify the exact duration before drawing conclusions. Every second mattered. Memory suggests it was 6 grueling weeks of dead ends, 6 weeks of absolute terror. That specific time frame completely shifts the context of this investigation. 7 long weeks of silence. Bryan Kohberger was captured on December 30th, 2022, Roughly 7 weeks after 4 bright Idaho students were stolen from us, law enforcement finally closed the net. But nobody knew yet. The timeline was established. Now came the painstaking task of connecting the digital fragments, cell phone pings, grainy surveillance footage, a microscopic trace of DNA leading to a total ghost. Against all odds, investigators hunted him down. We can only pray that same relentless pursuit is happening right now, behind closed doors. The digital trail he left behind was an absolute goldmine for seasoned detectives, a single solitary knife sheath abandoned at the scene. It held the killer's genetic fingerprint. A white sedan caught on camera matched a specific registration. The owner lived just miles away. Suddenly, every puzzle piece clicked perfectly into place. But the initial journey there was brutally public. Early on, the local police department faced absolute crucifixion from a terrified community. The world demanded immediate answers. Why was the manhunt moving at such a glacial pace? That terrifying delay mirrors what we are seeing unfold right now. But this vanishing is vastly different. A beloved elderly woman disappears into thin air. The physical clues were agonizingly scarce. There was no violent crime scene, no surviving roommates to interview, just a haunting empty space. The Idaho suspect studied criminal justice, carefully attempting to orchestrate the perfect untraceable crime. He powered down his mobile device, a calculated move to vanish entirely from the grid. Total digital silence. Yet this new phantom executed an even cleaner escape into the shadows. The truth was buried deep, but a monumental break in the case was imminent. Systemic investigative failures and widespread deceit would soon be dragged into the unforgiving light. The missing woman's mystery remains open. Meanwhile, prosecutors delivered crushing final arguments against Corey Richins today. The mounting evidence suggested absolute, undeniable guilt. Yet legal insiders issued a chilling warning. Do not assume this conviction is a guaranteed victory. The courtroom tension was suffocating. Listen closely to how the state framed her alleged betrayal. Corey Richins possessed a lethal ambition. She weaponized her husband's wealth to construct a flawless, affluent facade. But that glamorous exterior hid a rapidly rotting foundation. Evidence suggested severe financial incompetence. She ruthlessly secured high-interest loans to fund her dangerous delusions. She hemorrhaged stolen capital. Her entire empire was actively burning to the ground. Amidst the financial ruin, her focus shifted away from her loyal husband toward a shadowy lover. She fantasized about a sprawling estate with her new man. But the brutal reality? She was completely broke. Desperation breeds monsters, and this calculated risk-taker saw only one viable exit strategy. Her husband had to be permanently eliminated. That illicit affair became the ultimate fatal catalyst. The paramour was ultimately dragged onto the witness stand, forced to bear their twisted secrets. The defense fiercely prepared their counterattack. The final word was yet to be spoken. Leading legal analysts scoured every single transcript, searching for the fatal flaw in the state's aggressive timeline. Experts who dissect these horrific crimes daily sensed an underlying vulnerability in the prosecution. Whispers echoed through the packed courtroom gallery. A growing, undeniable unease spread among the spectators. The circumstantial mountain of evidence was massive, but crucial missing links threatened to unravel everything. Rarely does a suspect face such an overwhelming avalanche of incriminating data, yet the shadow of doubt lingered. Skepticism is sheer survival in the justice system, and the defense was preparing to exploit every single blind spot. The defense hammered one glaring gap. They couldn't prove where the fentanyl that killed Eric came from, or exactly how it entered his system. Legally, Corey was presumed innocent, but the shadow of doubt was growing rapidly, and that missing detail was her only shield. But the evidence suggested a darker reality, a mountain of secrets waiting to be unearthed. Behind closed doors, their marriage was unraveling. Rumors of affairs surfaced, alongside whispers that she believed life would be easier if Eric were dead. Evidence suggested a desperate financial spiral. She was drowning in debt, allegedly forging bank documents to siphon money from Eric's hard-built business. Then came the ultimate red flag. She secretly insured his life. It was a literal recipe for murder, and evidence suggested this wasn't the first attempt. Just weeks earlier, Eric barely survived an allegedly poisoned Valentine's Day sandwich, but nobody knew yet what her digital footprint would reveal. After Eric died, her search history became a goldmine. Queries like, How do forensic experts recover deleted iPhone data? Or the chilling search for a lethal fentanyl dose? And most devastatingly, how long do life insurance companies take to pay? But the final nail might have been the infamous walk the dog letter. Investigators discovered this hidden note stashed deep inside Curry's jail cell, tucked safely inside a legal study guide. A desperate maneuver orchestrated entirely from behind bars. The ink painted a damning picture. The state alleged she was explicitly coaching her brother to testify that Eric bought the pills in Mexico. When the trial hit, the defense went totally silent. No witnesses, no testimony from Curry, leaving them facing an incredibly steep climb. Their only play was attacking the housekeeper's credibility. They desperately tried poking holes in a narrative that had already trapped their client. From day one, that sheer gravity hung over the courtroom. Even now, that dark cloud remains. Let's pull back the curtain on the prosecution. Listen closely to exhibit number 10. Prosecutor Brad Bloodworth painted a very specific portrait. A woman driven by a deep, unresolved bitterness and a truly ruthless ambition. That bitterness started early. Her childhood was shaped by a father who tragically chose the bottle over his own daughter. He traded fatherhood for a prison cell. Her mother swapped parenting for the neon glow of casino slot machines. So Curry spent her youth scrubbing floors. She cleaned the sprawling estates of Park City's elite, watching wealth from the sidelines. Society didn't deem her lesser, but she felt the invisible sting of inadequacy. That shame ignited a dangerous, consuming obsession. She demanded to appear privileged, affluent, highly successful. Then she found Eric, a devoted, hard-working business owner who possessed exactly what she craved most: genuine wealth. They built a life, bringing 3 beautiful boys into the world. Curry finally had status, yet a dark unhappiness lingered beneath the surface. Evidence suggested she wanted out of the marriage, but walking away meant leaving behind the empire she had married into. An ironclad prenuptial agreement stood in her way. A divorce would strip away the very luxury she had sold her soul to acquire, so she quietly went to work in the shadows. Prosecutors say she siphoned $250,000 of equity straight out of Eric's home. The goal was to fund her own business, a secret exit strategy to finally escape Eric while keeping her pockets completely lined. But did this tragic origin story actually work? With a mountain of forensic evidence, painting her as a tragic social climber felt incredibly risky. The psychological leap from ambitious wife to cold-blooded killer was a massive gap to bridge. The motive made sense on paper, but that psychological profile didn't sit perfectly right. Legally, the state never has to prove why a murder happened. The law only demands they prove who poured the poison. They don't need the why. But a compelling motive binds a fragmented mystery together. How do you convince 12 strangers that a grieving widow turned children's book author could execute the father of her kids? You have to expose the monster behind the mask. And more importantly, you have to relentlessly follow the timeline of the money. When investigators dug into her finances, the illusion of their perfect life completely shattered. Eric's sudden death arrived precisely when his wife's financial world was collapsing. A terrifyingly convenient coincidence that left investigators stunned. The defense claimed innocence, but his tragic end solved every single one of her mounting problems. A healthy father drops dead exactly when his wife needs cash the most. The financial motive was glaringly, brutally obvious. The secret affairs, the hidden debt, the sudden millions in life insurance. Those puzzle pieces snapped perfectly into a portrait of absolute greed. But weaponizing her tragic upbringing felt like a dangerous double-edged sword. And that was the first mistake. Hearing about the little girl cleaning mansions to survive almost generated unwanted sympathy, a fatal misstep you never want a jury to feel. They needed a monster, a power-hungry sociopath, not a broken child, a money-obsessed predator. But the seeds of doubt were planted, and the clock was ticking. I hear you loud and clear. That was the underlying, undeniable fear. The defense might just hijack that narrative for closing arguments. Capitalizing on the chaos? Exactly. Exactly. Yet the most chilling detail, her self-published grief book, never even made it into evidence, and that omission leaves a glaring, deeply unsettling void in the courtroom. Evidence suggested it lacked legal relevance, but in the ruthless court of public opinion, it means everything. So now, we wait in the dark for a verdict in the Corey Richins trial. Jesse Weber, I know your schedule is relentless, and our tip lines are already blowing up today. I will let you go prep for Jesse Weber Live, airing tonight at 11 o'clock on News Nation. Jesse, your insight into these dark corners of the justice system is invaluable. Thank you. Dan, the pleasure is always mine. Keep seeking the truth out there. Keep seeking the truth. That phrase echoes louder tonight than any verdict, any press conference, any carefully crafted statement. Because truth is the only weapon that cannot be jammed, erased, or buried inside a jail cell study guide. 2 cases. 2 families shattered. 2 women, Nancy Guthrie and Corey Richens, representing entirely opposite ends of the same devastating spectrum. One woman vanished into silence. The other sat in a courtroom, surrounded by the wreckage of the life she destroyed. Both cases scream the same unbearable truth. Evil does not announce itself. It bakes birthday cakes. It coaches Little League. It writes children's books. It strums guitars in a garage band while quietly mapping out someone's destruction. That is the real horror we refuse to accept. A system fails when it stops asking the hard questions early enough. When comfort replaces courage. When paperwork buries urgency. 44 agonizing days for Nancy. 3 beautiful boys without a father because of Curry. Every single day of delay is another day justice bleeds out on the floor. We owe these families relentless, unforgiving pursuit. Not headlines, not theories, not tip lines that go cold by morning. Real answers, real accountability, real justice dragged into the light no matter how deep the shadows try to hide it. Nancy Guthrie is still out there somewhere, and whoever stole her from her family is still breathing free air tonight. That changes only when every single one of us refuses to look away. Keep watching, keep asking, keep seeking the truth. Because silence only protects the guilty, and we are not done yet, not even close.